Hey everyone, great to be with you this first lecture of week 5. I want to talk about epistemology, ontology, critical realism, and meaning making. Okay. And I think that the lectures that I have for you this week are really laying the framework for the ways that we think about emerging adulthood spirituality. So bear with me. I think you're going to find these really helpful and interesting. I'm excited about them, and I'm really glad to share them with you. So I want to consider this idea of meaning making. Sharon Dallas Parks talks about this idea of meaning making and how does one make sense of the world and how does one construct that and do that. And one of the ways that has truly helped me in my own studies is to understand a really, really important concept called critical realism. Now, to understand critical realism, you have to also understand positivism and constructivism, okay? These are approaches and assumptions that are made about how the world works, and it usually has two components to it. It has an ontological component to it, and it has an epistemological component to it. So the ontological is just sort of the sense of like what's foundational, like how do we think about things, and the epistemological is really thinking more about like how do we know what we know. And so when we think about these different sort of ways of approaching meaning, truth, what's real, it becomes really, really important, okay? So when we think of positivism, one of the ways that positivism thinks about ontology and epistemology is this, is that when it comes to the ontological world, or ontologically how I think about it, a positivist would say there's one reality. Okay, there's only one reality. Okay, and epistemologically, they would say, and we can know that one reality objectively. Okay, so a positivist oftentimes believes that the way that the world is the way that the world is, and we can know it, and therefore we have to live into it. Okay, a lot of times we find a positivism in a lot of religious circles. People are convinced that the Bible is true, that they understand it completely, that they don't really understand what all this debate is about one topic or another, or why somebody's woke or whatever it might be, because we have the truth and we just need to live it, right? Now, I don't mean to say that disparagingly. I'm just saying that there is this element of positivism where this is the way that one thinks. Okay. Now, a constructivist would say, look, there isn't one reality. There's actually multiple realities. And the ways that we think about it epistemologically is that realities are constructed, and what we know is simply subjective. There isn't like an ultimate reality. The realities that we basically have constructed it. We've made it up. It's just the way societies work. What something is that with regards to truth is simply because society has determined that that's what's best for everybody, and that's the way that it's kind of turned out. Okay, so a constructivist doesn't think that there is no ultimate reality, and that the ways that we think about what truth is that they're socially constructed. Okay, now let me be really honest with you. As a doctoral student for me, someone who is a person of faith, um, I really struggled as I thought about how I thought about my ontology and my epistemology. Okay, because as a Christian, I believe that there is a reality, that God is real, that there is a world that has some sense of order to it, and that there is a way of which we can live our best lives, right? Um, uh, that God provides for us, right? And so there's something about that was disorienting to me about the constructivist perspective. And at the same time, I think epistemologically, I see myself as a fallen human being. The idea of being able to know something objectively seems really, really difficult for me and anybody else. And we can know that by experience or philosophically or whatever. It can be really a challenge. And so I was kind of struck and torn between this idea of like, I'm not really like sold on positivism or essentialism, as some people call it. But I'm not sure what's being taught at the university that I got my PhD in that I hold to a constructivist point of view, and I actually didn't know what to do. until I stumbled across this concept of critical realism. And what critical realism says is that there is one reality, but we see this reality subjectively and depend upon good research and dialogue to find out what this reality is. So basically, critical realism is really holds in many ways to this idea that it is positivist in its ontology and constructivist in its epistemology. Okay. Now, what I love about this approach, which is held by people like Christian Smith and N.T. Wright and other researchers, is it allows for the reality that there ultimately is an ultimate truth, if you will, but we see through a glass dimly that that the whole point of studying, of research, of dialogue, is to work together to get a better glimpse as to what the truth is, what reality is, how the world actually works. And so what I love about critical realism is that it inspires in me wonder to continue to press and push to understand. It also inspires in me a sense of humility, where I may be wrong, that I may not know the answer quite right. And so there's a humility in my approach to things where I'm open to the perspective and ideas of others simply because that's the way it works. Now, what I love about this as well, and this is something that Miroslav Volf has said, when I think that I own the truth, then someone that disagrees with me, I see them as an enemy because I'm trying to defend the truth. But if the truth is something that I'm pursuing, and there are others that are pursuing the truth as well, now the person that may disagree with me is not my enemy, but is a fellow journeyer and can be my friend. Um, and there's something really generative about that approach. And so, I think about this a lot as I think about the work that we do, as we sort of turn this idea of in our class, emerging adulthood, as I think about my faith, as I think about as I wrestle with new ideas, there is room for us to change our minds. There is room for us to continue to grow, to see reality more clearly. There's a need for us to do that. And it seems to me that part of our job and our pastoral impulse is to create spaces where there is room for that as well. And I hope that even in this class, I'm creating spaces like that where you know that it's okay for you to put an opinion out there and we can talk about it. And that there is room for there to be a generosity, a generativity, a wishing the best of each other, where we learn together out of trust and mutual admiration and encouragement rather than out of fear and competition. And so I hope that perhaps this idea of critical realism might help you sort of think about your journey as you think about truth. And so here's just some questions for you. How do we make room for truth searching in our relationships and in the work that we do? How do we ensure we're seeking truth as friends and not enemies? And how might we consider small groups and interaction and rhetoric and social media in such a way where we have the sense of a humble pursuit of what is right and what is true and what is beautiful and what is helpful? It seems to me that that is the essence of what the gospel is about. And it's something that I believe probably all of us are wanting to invite others into. So I wanted to share that with you. I hope that maybe that unlocks some things for you and maybe it helps you in some sort of way as it really helped me.